Picture this. You walk into one of America's most famous grand hotels, the kind that used to host presidents, movie stars, and the richest people on earth. And it's gorgeous. The chandeliers are glowing. The marble floor is polished like glass. The staff are in perfect uniforms. But something feels off because the real power players, the billionaires who used to basically live in places like this, are gone. And they're not just upstairs hiding in a suite. They're actually not coming back. And almost nobody in the lobby even realizes it. Yet the entire way wealth moves to the world has shifted right under our noses, and these glittering hotels have become like movie sets, beautiful and impressive, but no longer where the main characters of money and power actually live their lives. In the next few minutes, you're going to see exactly why billionaires quietly fled America's grand hotels, where they went instead, and why they have almost no reason to ever return. But before we get into it, if you like stories that pull back the curtain on how the rich and powerful really live, take 2 seconds right now to hit the like button and subscribe, because it helps this channel a ton, and make sure you don't miss the next deep dive. All right, so let's walk through those revolving doors together and step back in time for a second, because to understand why the richest people left, you first have to understand how obsessed they used to be with these places, and how totally different the world is for them now compared to even 30 or 40 years ago. Back then, America's grand hotels were like private kingdoms. Think of the Plaza Hotel in New York or the Waldorf Astoria, the Beverly Hills Hotel in Los Angeles, the Breakers in Palm Beach. These were not just buildings. They were entire social universes. If you were a titan of industry, an oil magnate, an old money heir, this was where you want to be seen. Deals worth hundreds of millions were started over. Martinis in these bars. Marriages were arranged, careers were made or destroyed in whispers at the corner table. And being residents at a grand hotel meant something. It told the world, I've arrived. I belong to this tiny club at the top of the pyramid. But if you walk into those same lobbies now, at least in the United States, you'll see more tourists taking selfies and billionaires talking to their bankers. And the question is, what changed so completely that the ultra-rich basically broke up with the grand hotel lifestyle? Even after a ton of these places renovated, modernized, and desperately tried to keep them, you could say it about privacy or money or technology or image, and all of that is true. But the real story is deeper. Billionaires didn't just switch hotels. They switched realities. They built a world where they no longer need public luxury at all, and where a grand lobby, no matter how fancy, feels more like a risk than a reward. Imagine for a second what it meant in, say, 1955, to be a billionaire, or as close to it as existed then. You didn't have a private jet, because almost nobody did. You didn't have a network of hidden villas and secure compounds around the globe. What you had were these hotels. They were like airports for the wealthy, hubs that connected powerful people to each other. You checked into the Waldorf Towers in New York, and it was almost like joining an exclusive club. You would run into a senator at breakfast, a Hollywood star at lunch, and an oil baron at dinner, and no one outside that bubble really knew what was happening inside, because there were no smartphones, no social media, no Reddit threads tracking private planes. The only eyes on you were staff, and their job, backed by old-school loyalty and discretion, was to keep their mouths shut. They knew every secret in the building but would take it to the grave. So for the super wealthy, a grand hotel was the perfect mix of visible and invisible. Your name on a register gave you status. Your presence in the lobby told the right people you were there. But the public at large had no idea what you were doing. Jump cut to today, and that entire dynamic has flipped in a way that's almost impossible to undo. Because now, if a true billionaire walks to the front door of a famous hotel, it's like stepping onto a stage where every single person in the audience has a camera in their pocket and a direct line to the internet. One fan, one hater, one random tourist with a TikTok account can blast that billionaire's location to millions of people in seconds. And for someone whose time is worth tens of thousands of dollars an hour, whose security team is constantly calculating risk, that's a nightmare, not a luxury. So yeah, privacy is a huge part of the story, but it's just one piece, and we'll come back to that, because there's another shift that quietly killed a grand hotel life for billionaires. The rise of private everything. In the 1970s and 1980s, private jets started to become a thing for the upper elite, not just heads of state. By the 1990s, and especially the 2000s, if you were a serious billionaire and you didn't have a jet, you were behind. And once you can skip the regular airport and fly on your own plane, the whole logic of staying in hotels starts to change too. Think about it from their angle. If you got the money to own or charter a jet, why would you land, drive to a public hotel, walk through a lobby full of strangers, wait in line, deal with check-in, and sleep in a room that hundreds of people have used, when you could step off the plane onto a car that takes you straight to a private home or a villa or a hidden estate that's been set up exactly how you like it and that nobody else has access to? So over time, the richest people started building what insiders sometimes call shadow infrastructure, instead of relying on the open world of big hotels and public spaces. They created a parallel world that most of us never see, a network of private residences, members-only clubs, invitation-only resorts, and ultra-secure compounds, often managed by their family offices, not by hotel brands. There are entire companies now whose only job is to manage this quiet ecosystem for the ultra-rich, staffing private chefs and butlers, vetting drivers, rotating security teams, arranging doctors and tutors to fly in, stocking wine cellars, even bringing in a particular kind of pillow someone likes in every bed before they arrive. And when you can build that kind of controlled environment, a grand hotel starts to look old-fashioned, almost clumsy. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The grand hotels tried to adapt. They launched private floors, back entrances, VIP wings, but they hit a wall. Because at the end of the day, a hotel is still a hotel. It's a public brand that has to keep rooms full and lobbies buzzing. If a billionaire takes over an entire floor one week, the next week a bachelor party might be staying there. And it's the same kitchen, the same elevators, the same back of house. The more the average traveler has access, the less exclusive the place feels to the 1% of the 1%. And billionaires are very sensitive to that. Not always in a snobby way, but in a strategic one. They're thinking about security, control, and time. Let's talk security for a second. Because for a billionaire, threat doesn't just mean physical danger. It's kidnapping risk. It's legal exposure. It's business leaks. It's being filmed saying the wrong thing at a bar and having it go viral. In the old days, if a newspaper wanted to catch a CEO doing something stupid at a hotel bar, they'd have to send a photographer, hide in a corner, hope to get one decent shot. Now, if a tech founder or hedge fund guy gets a little too relaxed after a few drinks and starts talking, there's a good chance someone nearby is recording, maybe even without realizing how valuable that clip might be, and it only takes one leak to cause a major headache. Stock price drops, lawsuits, the whole mess. So a lot of billionaires and their advisors looked at grand hotels and said, this is just unnecessary risk. Why am I sharing walls and bars and elevators with people I don't know, when I could have my own space, my own staff, my own cameras, my own rules? And once that decision gets made, it tends to stick. Be honest, if you stayed one night in a mansion with a full staff and absolute privacy, would you really want to go back to waiting for room service at a regular hotel, no matter how nice it was? On top of that, there's another angle, customization. Billionaire lifestyles became incredibly tailored because their time and preferences are treated like sacred things. If a billionaire says, I only drink this one brand of tea, or I want the room a specific temperature, or I need a gym that's set up exactly like the one at home, a private residence team can make that happen in a way even the most high-end hotel struggles to match consistently. And yes, some chains created butler services and special floors, but once you had a living room, office, spa, and cinema all built to your exact taste in 5 different countries, the idea of rotating through even a penthouse suite that thousands of strangers have photographed starts to feel less special. There's also the simple fact that a lot of modern billionaires are deeply introverted, or at least publicly cautious. Think of the difference between old oil barons who love being seen in tuxedos at the Plaza versus a tech founder in a hoodie who would rather stay off the radar entirely. The culture wealth change, and with it, the taste in where to be seen, or actually where not to be seen. And this is where America's grand hotels started to lose not just their customers at the top, but their role as the main stage for elite life for a long time. If you wanted to meet other powerful people, you had to go to the same physical spaces, hotel lobbies, country clubs, charity galas. People would plan business trips around where the action was. Now, networking for the ultra-rich is handled in much quieter ways. Private WhatsApp groups, off-the-record retreats, closed-door conferences in remote locations, invite-only clubs that may not even call themselves clubs in New York and Los Angeles. There are places where you only get in if 3 people who are already members vouch for you, and nobody walks to the front door with luggage and a bellhop, because it's not that kind of place. It's the kind of place where your driver pulls into an unmarked entrance, and you go straight to the top floor by private elevator. No lobby crowd, no tourists, no random wedding party stumbling into your meeting with a hedge fund manager. Another piece that quietly pushed billionaires away from America's grand hotels is politics and optics. After the 2008 financial crisis, and again with things like Occupy Wall Street and all the conversations about inequality, a lot of super rich people became very aware how bad it looks to be photographed living it up in a crystal chandelier ballroom, while regular people are struggling. It's not that they suddenly became saints, but they did become more careful, and public, highly recognizable luxury became something to avoid, not display. If you're a CEO laying off thousands of workers, you really want your face showing up on Instagram at a 5-star New York hotel, sipping $100 cocktails under gold-plated ceilings. So instead, many of them shifted to what people now call stealth wealth, expensive but quiet, a plain sweater that costs $1,000 but looks normal, a car that blends instead of a bright orange sports car, a home hidden behind a long driveway instead of a giant mansion on a busy street. And in the same way, their travel moved from visible symbols like big hotels to invisible spaces like private compounds and unbranded villas. There's also a tax and regulation angle, which isn't beautiful to talk about but is very real. If a billionaire owns property or rents through complex structures, it can sometimes be easy to control what's listed where, how long they're on the books in a certain city, what can be written off as business versus just showing up at a hotel where everything is clearly documented with your name on it. Staying somewhere for months in a hotel used to be seen as glamorous. Now it can raise uncomfortable questions. So many of them quietly replace long hotel stays with unofficial homes, rented or owned under trust that don't scream, "Look at me, I'm living at the Ritz for half the year." And remember, once the system is built, it feeds on itself. Lawyers set up these structures. Family offices manage the logistics. Private jet companies link flights to the right homes. And suddenly the billionaire has a seamless life that floats above the public layer, only touching it when absolutely needed. Meanwhile, the grand hotels are still doing what they've always done. Doors open, lights on. Anyone with a credit card and enough money can book the presidential suite if it's available, and that's part of the problem. Because the more accessible a place becomes, the less it feels like a true sanctuary for the very top, even if the price is still eye-watering. Think of the Plaza again, once a long-term residence for old money socialites and mega-rich families. Over time, like many grand hotels, it transformed. They turned parts of it into condos. They started hosting more weddings, more corporate events, more tourists, and sure, it's still iconic, still gorgeous. But the energy shifted from closed world of the elite to bucket list destination for anyone who saves up enough cash or credit points. And that's not bad, it's actually kind of democratic. But it also means the ultra-rich mentally filed it in a different category. No longer their private stage, but an experience of masses, while they went on to build a new, quieter stage somewhere else. And speaking of those new stages, where did they actually go, if not America's grand hotels? In some cases, they did switch brands, but more often they switched categories. A lot of billionaires now prefer ultra-boutique resorts. They're almost impossible to get into unless you're already in a certain circle, as well as completely private villas and estates that never show up on regular travel sites. And then there are the yachts, which are basically floating private hotels with full crews, chefs' gyms, cinemas, and even medical staff. Think of a 300-foot yacht as a movable grand hotel that you don't have to share with anybody. For the super rich, that's incredibly attractive. You choose who comes aboard, who cooks, who cleans, who guards. The ocean becomes your front yard, and nobody can just wander in from the street on land. Many cities now have branded residences, like towers attached to famous hotel names, where you own an apartment but still get hotel-style service. That's a halfway point that some wealthy people like. But the very top often go one step further. They commission custom homes in places like Malibu, Palm Beach, Aspen, or out-of-the-way towns you've never heard of, and then they bring a hotel to them, hiring staff away from big-name hotels to work exclusively for their family. Imagine being so rich that you basically absorb the best parts of a grand hotel into your private home. A chef who worked at a 5-star restaurant, a house manager who used to run a luxury property, a driver who knows how to deal with VIPs, a security chief who used to work for a head of state. Once that ecosystem is in place, what exactly is the upside of returning to a public lobby, other than nostalgia? And nostalgia doesn't usually win against convenience. Control and safety won. Of the most symbolic moments of this shift happened with the Waldorf Astoria in New York. For decades, it was not just a hotel, it was a home base for presidents, billionaires, and foreign leaders. U.S. presidents used to stay there when they came to New York. Major CEOs kept permanent suites. It was world famous as a power address. Then it was sold to a Chinese company, underwent huge renovations, and part of the building was turned into luxury condos. At the same time, the U.S. government started worrying about security, especially for foreign surveillance, and quietly moved official stays elsewhere. All of a sudden, that old pattern of if you're important, you stay at the Waldorf broke. And once those habits are broken, they don't easily snap back. That story is one building, but it represents a wider trend. The old rituals of power centered around grand hotels got interrupted by technology, politics, and new ways of living. And the ultra-rich didn't sit around waiting for the hotels to get together. They just built a private alternative. Now, what happened to the grand hotels themselves? Did they die? Not at all. But they did pivot, and almost always away from the billionaire as the main customer. Instead, they turned toward three big groups: corporate events, weddings, and special occasions, and what you might call aspirational travelers, people who aren't billionaires, but will happily splurge for one incredible night or weekend. And from a business point of view, that can actually be more reliable money. A billionaire might demand an entire floor, special security measures, extreme privacy, and then show up late or cancel at the last minute. An upper middle class couple who's been dreaming of their wedding at a certain ballroom for 10 years is going to pay the deposit, follow the rules, and show up on time. And when you multiply that by hundreds of couples and corporate clients, suddenly the hotel has a solid revenue stream that doesn't depend on keeping a handful of moody billionaires happy. Of course, the irony is that the whole reason those couples and tourists want to be there is because of the O plus aura of wealth. The stories about princes and tycoons and glamorous movie stars. They're buying the ghost of the billionaire lifestyle, while the real billionaires are somewhere else entirely, hidden away behind tinted windows and private gates. Another way grand hotels adapted was by turning parts of themselves into real estate, slicing off floors to sell as condos, or building private residence towers next door that gave them cash up front and a base of wealthy, but not necessarily billionaire level, owners who would use the amenities, the spa, the restaurants, the bar. Yet even those residents know that their building is part home, part Instagram backdrop. The hotel brand wants to attract influencers, high-spending tourist destination weddings. And sometimes that buzz can clash with the quiet that ultra-rich people crave. So we're left with this odd situation where these stunning buildings are more popular on social media than ever before. They host more events, get more online attention, but they're less central than ever to the daily lives of the richest humans on the planet. And that brings us back to the title, Why Billionaires Fled America's Grand Hotels and Never Came Back. Because when you zoom out, what you see is not a random preference shift, but a complete rewiring of how elite life works. The old model was gather in the brightest, most visible spaces in the biggest cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. Show off little, do business in the open. Let the building itself signal your status. The new model is almost the exact opposite. Hide in plain sight, or don't be seen at all. Move quietly between private homes. Fly straight from your compound in Texas to your chalet in Colorado, or from your island in the Caribbean to your boardroom in Silicon Valley. Never touch the public lobby unless it's for a conference, a speech, or a short, controlled appearance. And even then, enter through the loading dock. That doesn't mean no billionaire ever stays in a grand hotel anymore. Of course they do sometimes, when they need to be somewhere fast, or when a particular event makes unavoidable, or when they simply don't have time to set up a full private arrangement. But those are exceptions, not the rule. They're like cameos, not recurring roles. And the staff who work in those hotels will tell you, off the record, how different it is now, how the long-term high-roller residents vanished, how the real money is in conferences and weddings, how the true whales glide in and out so quickly and so quietly that you'd never know they were even there. Maybe a convoy of black SUVs at 3 a.m., a floor blocked off for maintenance. And then they're gone. So when you next see a photo of a sparkling American hotel lobby, full of people in suits and dresses, clinking glasses and smiling for the camera. Remember that in a way, you're looking at a theater, and the actors on stage are no longer the oil tycoons and railroad barons of old. They're you and me and everyone who still experiences luxury in public. The true billionaires took their show to a private studio where the audience can't see, let alone buy a ticket. And the funny part is, even as the ultra-rich abandon these grand hotels, the myth of those places as where the rich stay is stronger than ever in popular culture, movies, TV shows, Instagram, all keep that image alive because it's visually satisfying. Storytellers love a crystal, lobby, a dramatic staircase, a suite with gold faucets. It's a perfect symbol, even if reality quietly moved elsewhere. So what does all this mean for us? On one hand, it's a little sad. There's something undeniably cool about knowing that a few floors above you, in the same building where you might be having a drink, history was being made, fortunes traded, alliances formed. On the other hand, there's also something kind of powerful about realizing that the world of public luxury still belongs to regular people with enough hustle or savings to tap into it for a moment, while the ultra-rich, in hiding, may have more privacy, but also more isolation, because you can't really soak in the energy of a city from a sealed compound. You can't eavesdrop on the interesting conversations in a hotel bar if you never go one. You trade some magic for a lot of control. As for the hotels, they'll keep evolving. Some will lean even harder into being social media backdrops. Others will try to recreate exclusivity through private clubs and members-only spaces inside their walls. A few might manage to win some ultra-rich clients back with insanely personalized service and near-total privacy. But the era when America's grand hotels were the default home and playground of billionaires is gone, replaced by a new era of hidden palaces and secret addresses. And that's a story most people never see. But now you do, and I'm curious what you think about it. Does it bother you that the richest people basically built their own invisible world and abandoned the public stages that used to define wealth? Or do you think it's better this way, with the big glamour spaces open to anyone who can get there, not just a handful of dynasties? Let me know your thoughts and comments. I read as many as I can, and I'd really like to hear how you see this new divide between public luxury and private luxury. Also, if you know someone who loves talking about how the rich really live, or who always posts pictures from famous hotels, share this video with them and see what they say. Use it to start conversation. And if you watched all the way to the end, you're exactly the kind of person I'm making these deep dives for. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, so you don't miss the next story that pulls back the curtain on the hidden side of money and power.